live. This is the April 4th meeting of the NatickFOSS user group. Natick being a town in Metro West Boston area, and we attempt to meet the first Thursday of every month. This period of time, we're doing it only online, though if luck prevails and health can make it possible with the pandemic maybe relenting on us, we'll get back to meeting live and try to continue this opportunity for people to tune in via YouTube, thanks to our video guru, Dennis Payne, who has the account that allows this to happen. Thank you very much for all who are here and all who may be watching live or later. We have an agenda, and I'm going to share my screen for the correct, where is it? I think that's it. No, that's not it. Where? I'm sorry, everyone. I am having a difficult time finding my Firefox in this choice. I see everything but Firefox. Has Chromium done something very odd, not allowing me to show Firefox at all? Holy cow. Let me try the entire screen business then. And jump to Firefox. Is anyone seeing the NatickFOSS user group agenda?
No, I'm seeing Jitsi.
We're seeing what looks like either an email
or a document picker.
Yeah, or the navigation.
All right, let me cancel out of this and try again.
Yeah, I think it would be your file navigator that was showing.
All right, I'm going
to. That's Katie Eve's dolphin.
Yeah, I'm no longer sharing. This is a great start to our meeting, I must admit. Let's try sharing again. Mastodon art. That's not it. Window. NatickFOSS Jitsi meeting. There it is, right up in the center. I don't know why it wasn't present before. I hope that now shows our current agenda.
You got it.
All right. So, as we begin talking about what's on the agenda, we have a mention of a celebration in the FOSS news. Gmail, which is everybody's love and love to hate mail service, celebrates its 20th anniversary today, or this month anyway. Anybody love the fact that they use it or have comments about what it does that they don't like? Okay, then we'll just let it lie there as a thing for you to track down and make a judgment. The other major FOSS news is that we're coming to the 2404 Noble Numbat, release of Ubuntu, which is coming up the 25th of this month. And there are links to an upgrading guide if you currently use Ubuntu. But that leads us very quickly into the discussion about Canonical's Snap usage, Snap being a containerized way to package software that has been under some careful scrutiny recently because the Snap Store had some cryptocurrency wallet scams appear, and it has made people reconsider using their Ubuntu favorites. And I think this would be a good time to open the floor to a discussion of what people are in this group doing about it. Choosing a safe, quote, Linux distribution.
Two things. Dick and Jill have indicated in the chat they would like to speak. But I would like to say I personally have said before in this group, I have switched to Linux Mint Debian Edition, which does not have any Ubuntu components.
Dick and Jill, mute can come off. You're live. But I don't think we hear you at this moment. Microphone may have cut out.
Turn off your microphone, please.
Okay.
Dick has a very poor connection for some reason. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, good. We've both switched to Linux Mint on our laptops, not yet on our desktops.
And what was the major reason you decided to do that, Jill?
Two. One was the damned snaps, and the other was the fact that Ubuntu kept popping up asking us to get their paid subscription, which we didn't have to get for personal usage, but it was very annoying to have it popping up all the time because we didn't want to hassle with it. And third was there wasn't a third one. I sorry about that. Maybe I'll remember it.
Okay. Bob, you had a comment?
Yes, agreed about the problems with it's Ubuntu Pro, which keeps on injecting itself into the updating process. I found some relatively simple ways to neuter that, and unfortunately, I just don't want to stay with a distro that might do that. And there's been so much talk about going to an all snaps version and maybe even an immutable core, which would mean we'd have even fewer options. It's just, as Jill says, it's getting to be a hassle. And I think new users are beginning to notice, and why not let them start on Linux Mint Cinnamon? It's an easy one to use. It's a familiar interface to both Apple and Windows users. And I think some people want to speak.
Jerry, I think you might have been next.
Okay. I've been using Fedora for a long time. I really have no problem with it. I think it's probably a little bit less easy to use out of the box, or it used to be, than Ubuntu. I think that's changed. I think Fedora is just as easy to use as any other distribution these days.
A vote for Linux Mint, 2 votes for Linux Mint and for Fedora, which is a completely different form of Linux in the way that it observes updates using a different updater system. I believe the apt is still in use on the Mint. Is that correct, Bob?
Yes, both the Debian and the Cinnamon editions use apt. The Cinnamon edition still has Ubuntu components. The Debian edition pulls straight from the Debian repository, but it's all Deb, all Synaptic, all apt.
Right. Jill?
Thanks. I remembered the third item, which was that I've forgotten it again, but on comment on the Mint Cinnamon, we have it also does flat packs, but not snaps that I know of. Oh yes,
You can add snaps.
Dick says you can add snaps.
And what about
The one that was the real problem for us was going into this new version of Ubuntu, was that they were not supporting the touchpad for mousing. You could mouse around, but you couldn't set it for tap to click, which is very annoying.
Yeah. Is that something because you were still in beta, do you think, or?
Well, possibly, but it just, I mean, we only switched over a week ago. They were coming down to the wire on it, so you would think that they would have had it ready by then.
That's certainly true for the hardware drivers that are typically in place fairly early so that they can, so that any Linux distribution can serve the hardware to its most effective level.
Right.
I recall having some issue with my touchpad with the Ubuntu version of KDE, and I still don't know whether it was KDE overriding something, but was able to solve it. And I don't remember how, because it's been 5 or 6 years since I did the install originally, and have only updated with all the drivers in place.
Yeah, well, they used to have good support, so why did they remove it?
Good point. Good point. And
Money.
certainly settings may be something that are in place but harder to find, because that kind of part of any Linux setup tends to get tweaked and changed. Things get moved from where they used to be, so you have to get to the right place to find the answer. Yes, there was another voice there.
I believe it was Bill.
Bill didn't say anything, but Bill had his hand raised.
Then
Oh.
Bill should talk.
I said money.
Good answer. Well, I may be looking at one of the non-system D distros now that there are more of them, more stable, but Snap not required would also be a preference. Well, I haven't changed yet, but I'll be looking. Flip side, Ubuntu manually reviewing Snap Store is a good thing, and if they start thinking about security of other things, that would be good too. And other people, as we've just found out, haven't had deep reviews, and so more reviews is good.
That is a good point. The more hands that judge the free and open source software, the better for all the rest of us who are more user level, because hidden is not good in the open source world. And
Yes,
welcome,
yes.
Bill. Okay, let me flip back so I can focus on my agenda here. Another item related to fonts, to snaps, was something that Bill passed forward through a Mastodon post, that if you are having trouble with locating fonts that can be used by Snap packages, you want to use the listing of your font as part of your user USR folder rather than in the hidden local share folder.
However, there's a reason to not do that. Since web browsers can be leveraged by JavaScript to take a list of all the fonts available on a device and fingerprint a device that way when cookies are suppressed, having only the normal web browsery fonts in user local share, and your personal fonts only in home.local, is a good, safer division from a privacy tracking point of view. The list of all fonts installed on your machine, some of both places, will identify your operating system and you personally, typically. Just as good as your zip code plus birthday.
That sounds like very good advice. Does that coincide with when a font gets installed? I get asked in my system, do you want all users to be able to use this font or just you?
Right.
Where would you counsel that answer gets done?
That is the choice of deciding which of these two places to put it. And if you say all users, it may ask you to give your password again so it can do the install as root. And only me is the safe choice there. And that's a safe choice only if you're using a browser in a snap. That's an advantage of a browser in a snap, is that it doesn't see those fonts.
So they should be put in your personal, if you want them to be kept personal, and into the
Right.
system level if you want the browser to be able to use them.
Right. And if you're using a browser that's distributed the old-fashioned way instead of a snap, unless you take some other action, and perhaps Flatpaks would do that, I don't know, it may be able to still list your personal fonts as they had been initially.
Very good information. Thank you for clearing the original post up. I had not followed through on it, but thought it was a very interesting component of the snaps and Flatpaks and whatnot. Bob, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I question. I apparently Bill will not be able to answer this definitively. Maybe not. Flatpak. Bill said snaps are insulated and can use the local fonts and therefore don't use the system-wide fonts. But is this also true of Flatpak? Does anyone know? If a browser were a Flatpak. Again,
The reverse of what you said.
the reverse is
The browser in the Snap only sees system fonts, not personal.
it does not use the local user fonts.
Which is more privacy preserving if you've kept that distinction.
It's more privacy preserving if they are using the system fonts.
If you put all of your weird favorite fonts in personal, yes.
Okay, so it's if the fonts are in your personal home directory.
That's a more sequestered place. The browser in a Snap does not see those as part of your system.
Okay, and the question was whether Flatpak does.
Maybe someone can research that for us and come back to let us know. I don't know exactly how you would test that, since it's a browser attack vector, I guess you'd call it. If the browser can identify more details about you because of your fonts, you'd have to set up some kind of circle to evaluate it, if I understand that correctly. So
Right.
we need a web page that doesn't attack. Oh, we don't want that. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not set one of those up as a test.
Well, maybe see which fonts are available to a particular browser as either a Snap, a Flatpak, or a traditional install. And I think Bill already hinted as to what we'd see.
Okay. Well, I hope we find that there are more solutions than there are questions to issues like this, because we have typically counseled people to choose Linux and to choose open source because of their relative safety and their openness to observation. But if there are issues that crop up, we have to be honest that we want those solved as well as they can be and as quickly as they can be, rather than holding off on our basic recommendation. We don't want people to think, oh, well, I won't use Linux or open source because it has problems. We do not want that to be the takeaway from our discussion today.
Right.
All right. FOSS history. I did not come across any that were of particular note. Does anybody know of some that are worth mentioning? Well, chime in later if you come up with any. Leading us to our hot software. And I suppose this is for those people who decide to stick with Canonical and who choose Pro status. There is a 12-year support for all those users who take that combination in hand for their Ubuntu and presumably other flavors of the Ubuntu family, like the Kubuntu and the Lubuntu and the others of the Ubuntu group.
And this is good for servers that you're deploying in a commercial environment?
Servers are for a little bit different level from the routine user, but we depend on servers being safe and updated reasonably. So it's really nice to see that a well-maintained server can actually run for a long-term support for 12 years
Right.
before needing to be not necessarily scrapped, but I imagine a 12-year-old piece of hardware is a little bit questionable for a big-time server.
Exactly. At that point, you're at least going to need to dust the fans.
Absolutely a no-no if you are a commercial organization. I have run some computers for 14 years, but those were Apple IIe's well back in my career. And that was quite amazing to me that they lasted as long as they did before we decided to move up in the world to the next level of computing. It was a very powerful piece of evidence that in those days, Apple was a hardware company that provided software. Now it seems that it's a software company that takes over with its hardware more locked down than ever. And some of us are in Linux because of that fact. And there's a hand up. Whose is it? Jerry.
Yeah, it's mine. I just want to mention that Fedora 40 release date is scheduled for April 23rd.
Thank you. So this is a big month for distribution releases, and we look forward to feedback from those using the new releases when they come out. We probably won't have any install fests. Those are a little difficult in these times, but those who are current users of a particular brand of software, the distribution level, we'll have a brief time before we have our May meeting, which is also in the first week again. So maybe 2 weeks of experience to give a first impression won't be a bad idea. Dick and Jill have their hand up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good. I've got too many buttons conflicting with each other here. I missed the first 15 minutes, more or less. So, sorry. So I think I have new information, but I'm not sure. On the Ubuntu Pro option, I didn't hear, but you can get 5 or less licenses to use it for free as just a normal user. I don't know that I'm recommending it, but I hadn't heard that at the beginning. I think they added it a little later.
Hmm. Does the option provide any significant advantage other than the extended long-term support?
I think it does, and that's one of the reasons we backed off. We want the regular Ubuntu to not have held back features. If it's only for server use, I wouldn't worry too much. But for a casual user, they ought to be able to get the tools when they want them. So right now we're very happy with Linux Mint as old experienced 2 week users of it. And but the ease with which we hopped aboard is what I would like for friends, for clients, for anyone I'm recommending to. It was a big difference, and I was surprised.
It's nice to hear. Very nice to hear. Okay, let us examine the next line there. Hot software has only one line in it, but we have hot hardware also with one line, and this is originally an Ed Piesowitz item, but I think Bob also has an intent to chime in with his experience on some keyboards. So if you are prepared, Bob, let's go to you and see what's going on, and I will unshare my own for the moment, and then we'll come back to the agenda afterwards.
Okay. What I think probably first ought to be mentioned is the article that Ed submitted, because it's a fairly good overview. And so let me see if I can bring it up so that we can just take a little peek. Hot hardware. Open link. And now let's see if I can share my screen and not get kicked out of the meeting. There. This is the one. Explaining why your keyboard feels so darn good or way too mushy. Ars Technica, which by the way has some ads, I talks about mechanical keyboards, membrane keyboards. I have one of each. And they also mentioned chiclet keyboards, which you find on devices, mobile devices, and other kinds of keyboards, and the things that go into the making of good or poor quality in mechanical keyboards. So I'm going to stop sharing this so that I can get back to our meeting, so that I can share. I'm going to open up my other self on the other computer. And if I do this right, there, you should see in the Bob P again. And if there's some way of bringing me forward, there may be a pin function, pin to stage or something. Let me see if I can do it in a way that will make this more visible. Is that showing for everybody as a larger picture of me?
As an alternative to that, Bob, people can just click on that segment of the split screen.
Okay, it is actually the three dots over Bob P again, and pin to stage is the option.
Right, but everybody can, instead of having the 4 square window choice, can on their own just click on that keyboard panel, and it will pop open for each individual
I
looking
see.
at.
A single click does the same thing. That is what Jitsi calls pin to stage. Okay, so anyway, this is a mechanical keyboard, and it's a Red Dragon Serrara. This particular one has a very clicky feel to it, and you'll probably hear it if I unmute. Well, I don't want to unmute without. Yeah, I think my speakers are off. If this gives any feedback, let me know, but I'm going to unmute. And I'm going to mute myself over here. Now, do I still have feedback? Oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. Let's just listen from the other microphone. You might be able to hear it from now. Let me get a little document. There. You may be able to hear the clicking. And that is one of the things people like about mechanical keyboards. They do have both an auditory and a tactile feedback. And the other thing about these things is there are different kinds of switches. The ones I've got are called red, and the red comes from Cherry MX was the main company making these switches when it was still U.S. production. So the Cherry Red are actually the quietest of the mechanical keyboard switches. There are some called Blue, which are really super loud, and they sound like the old-fashioned typewriters in an office. And Brown is one that's preferred by people who want to compromise. The red is preferred by some gamers because it is a little quieter, but it's not like a membrane keyboard. If I were to go back to my other self and we pin my regular me, let me first of all, let me see if I can, okay. If we pin the regular me to the stage, we will see one thing more, which is what I use during meetings because it's quieter. It is a membrane keyboard. And both of these have LEDs which can be controlled. This membrane keyboard only allows me to change the overall color. Whereas I can change each key on the mechanical keyboard. The mechanical keyboard costs about 5 times as much, and so you expect better. But I can make my mechanical keyboard, if we want to go back to that, I want to just show that I've made it into various zones. I created this pattern. It is nothing that was built in. I have zoned the QWERTY keys. Sorry, it's upside down and backwards. And I have zoned the number keys above them. And I have zoned the function keys, the numeric keypad, which actually is pink, even though this color is off. The home cluster, the arrow keys, these are all different colors. And I think Ed actually is on this call, and he would have some things he might want to say. So why don't I wrap up what I'm doing here and go back to video mute on this guy, and we can have a little more discussion than I have.
Okay, Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Bob, what model keyboard is that? Not the one you're at, the other one you were showing.
Yeah, the mechanical keyboard that I own is I will put this into chat, but it's a Sorara model 582, and it's from Red Dragon. Red Dragon is the company.
Okay,
and they make several.
Because about 4 or 5 years ago, I purchased an Inland IK400 gaming keyboard from Micro Center, and this thing is very heavy. It's got the exact same keycaps as your keyboard there.
Yes,
and it is the clicky type keyboard. I hit a key on it and then I got a menu, so I'm going to try to switch to a different tab. I don't know if people can hear it, but it is
yeah
a type of clicky keyboard. And my experience over the years, I got my first what I'll call a real PC back in 1997. That was back on Windows 95. I've used some really cheap and some really decent keyboards, and the ones that I found over the years, this particular type, it's either like a gaming keyboard, because I found that the way these are manufactured, they're going to last you a long time. And this one's going on 5 years now. This was the one I brought with me to Science on State Street last year.
Okay. I just a little note. I did put into the chat what my brand is and what the model is. And the other thing is, instead of cherry switches, to make the keyboard more affordable, Red Dragon has been sourcing from China, and they're a Chinese company, either Taiwan or China company themselves. And the company is OEMU. I don't know how to pronounce it, probably Omu or Weimu. And it's a mainland China company. they make switches which are also rated as red, blue, or brown. They're not quite the quality that Cherry MX was, but they are far cheaper, and the keyboard itself is lighter weight, which of course means it's not as solid, but it also is more portable.
Yeah, because a while back I was in the local Walmart, and their consumer electronics brand is called On with 2 N's.
Yeah.
And I've got to actually have a couple of their external USB solid state drives. That's what I've been using. And they also had a keyboard called Game On. The keycaps are exactly the same as this one I bought from Inland. The only difference is that under the slash and the right shift, the menu and the function keys are reversed. And it also has a 4th LED win lock with an icon of a lock. But it quality wise, it's the build on it, the quality is just as good as this Inland keyboard.
Yeah,
who's manufacturing them? I have no idea.
Yeah, and Jerry Feldman chimed in with his being a Kensington K64370 keyboard for life. And the main thing about these things is, yes, if you get a good one, they last forever. And they have a feel almost like the old IBM Selectric typewriters. But they're not good for me for meetings, which is why I've got a membrane keyboard so I can be quiet. And also, some gamers like membrane keyboards because you can literally glide your hands over the keys, and they have very little travel. More travel means you have to really hit the key, and some gamers don't like that.
Those of us who use laptops are doomed to the laptop keyboard so that we don't have to have giant tables surrounding us.
Yeah.
For the external.
Jerry says his Kensington is nice and quiet. And the other thing I wanted to say is that on many of these mechanical keyboards, you have a puller tool and you can pull out the switch and replace it with a different kind. I could do that with mine if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Dick and Jill?
I wanted to add our laptops have all the features except the video ones built in, and you can do those up on the screen. You can project your keyboard on the screen. You're typing below, but it's telling you what you're doing. You can switch languages quickly that way, for example. But Mint confronted me on the setup as soon as I went into advanced. It had keyboard among other things, and here I am on a laptop. And it asked me if I wanted to hear a click on tap, and if so, how loud. So the computers are ready to do a lot of what you said. Going in and finding it is easier for me now because they prompted me during the setup.
Now that's an electronic instead of being part of the keyboard, of course. So you're just getting the simulation of a clicky keyboard.
Yes, yeah. But you can simulate a Cherry keyboard if you want.
Yeah, it gives a good audio feedback alternative. However, it doesn't have the travel and it doesn't have the tactile feel of the mechanical keyboards. But you pay a price for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing the Firefox window now that we have not exhausted ourselves, but enhanced our understanding of why a keyboard pleases the person using it. All right. I love hardware. I just have a hard time using a bunch of different hardware because of my layout, which is less table and more kind of small space. Fitting for a laptop is good, but it's not a real desk, so I can't spread out quite so much. Okay, hot internet. The FCC, in charge of our communications and allowances, has proposed and voted to raise the broadband definition to 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload. Now that, I think, is more as a definition, since every provider of internet connectivity wants to be defined as broadband. And as far as I know, the major players are all offering at least this much, if not more. I think Comcast's currently saying that they give you 256 megabits or megabytes per second, depending on how you write it. And download is what most people are using broadband for. Very limited amount of upload issues, except if you're sharing your own videos or a large number of photos attached to something. Did I hear a comment coming in? No, I heard a whoosh, but it must have been a text chat. Okay. I personally have the Verizon with the FiOS, and for me, I'm closer to gigabit most of the time, both on download and upload, in spite of not actually using it for streaming much. I have very good luck with it, though I must admit it is more expensive for the package than many people want to spend. Hand is up, and it is Dick. But the switch has not been switched on you, Dick, so I can't hear you. Your microphone is, there it comes.
Now you can hear me.
Yes.
I've been having trouble turning off that raised hand. I don't know why. So the corner of it is extra. Interesting. Raise, lower, raise. Very confusing. It's got to do with the Jitsi. I've not been having a touchpad problem. Clicking doesn't do it either.
I think
I'm toggling the signal. Well, maybe it did go down.
Your hand is not raised at the moment.
Okay. I'm glad.
but we can hear you.
Yes. I will now mute again.
All right. It was a test of the system. Here we go back. All right. So we hope that everybody gets broadband sooner rather than later. But in many cases, the wiring is the big issue. And in probably most cases, if you live in an extremely rural place, excuse me, for which there are the satellite dish kinds of solutions, and I'm not sure whether they're going to get to be called broadband or not. Jerry?
Yeah, I had a friend who lives out in, he now lives in Connecticut, but he lived in, or what's the town where the, in Western Massachusetts, where, not in Brimfield, but in, He lives out in that area. And he had to do dial-up internet
Wow.
because there was no broadband for him. So he went with satellite internet. And one of the tricks he used on a satellite was he used to PAM the dish. That way
What?
the rain and the snow would just fall off.
Ah,
But his better solution was to move down the road to Connecticut. And he's in Union, Connecticut, which is the first town in Connecticut on Route 84. And he's right on the exit. If you get off that exit, keep on going straight, you're in his driveway.
Ha.
But he moved essentially down the street from where he did live. And now he has broadband.
so the old adage of location, location, and location still appears to be in play. Okay. This next one is a very long read, but I think worth considering as we look at the question of what the job market is for tech people in general. This person in the long read that I'm about to bring up, Baldur Bjarnason, I believe I'm mentioning that, from Iceland, does contract work, according to the article. And as he does that, it began to cross his plate that jobs were going to be harder to get because of the AI bubble. Everybody's talking about making artificial intelligence do the work that standard coders used to do. And in the web developer job market, that can have a huge impact on whether you're going to get a job as a contractor or you're going to be overlooked, since the expectation from the CEO kind of level is that if it looks good and it attracts business and it makes my stock attractive to the stock market, I don't care if it doesn't handle edge cases all that well, because 6 months from now, there'll be another replacement and I need 6 months of short-term gains. So if you read the whole article, I think you will find that it's a very reserved look at how large language model AI has an effect that people don't expect, because the worker is once again not the arbiter of what gets done. It's the guy in the plush seat in the central office, or the lady in the plush seat in the central office that says, make my stock look good, make my stock look good. My shareholders need profit. So please do read this or comment on it if you already have. And I hear Dick ready to make a comment.
Okay. I just wrote and did not yet post a editorial comment on my webpage, Money is Not Wealth, and I guess it'll be up there by tonight. And it's on the same topic, but coming in from a totally different side. The U.S. government has just appropriated $8.5 billion so Intel can develop a more powerful chip. It's all about AI. And we are also in what I am likening in my comment to the nuclear arms race that turned into a never-ending spiral. Each side saw the other side do something, so they had to do more. And for some reason, that doesn't stop. It keeps going. And it's dangerous. It can end life as we know it or any other way. And I think AI is totally capable of causing the same problems. First of all, unemployment, because half our news, literally online, is fake news. It's made up. And it comes in quickly from anywhere. And I think AI is going to make that much easier to do. Can, if we have a lot of people in the US ready to vote to take away democracy, that's just stunning. And that's what this combination of spiraling efforts is doing. The bottom line to me is the US in a spiral competing with China and to some degree Russia has put a big bunch of your and my money, not the wealthy folks, they don't pay taxes anymore, but we're funding a spiral which, among all the other things it can do that are wrong, ruining a lot of kinds of jobs. And if it's wrong some of the time, as Al got pointed out, they're not worried. They will have legal protection against that. So it's okay. Like not paying taxes, same sort of stuff. And having good lawyers is important. Um, the worst thing about it that I see at this time is you could have AI get a hold of all the nuclear launch buttons in the world and push them. But it doesn't have to. If it pushes one, it's got us all set to do the rest. That's what these spirals are about. Same topic. I'm very worried about our investments in AI.
Thank you, Dick.
I'm glad to hear somebody more worried than I am.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. In any event, our votes do count, and we vote for open source and open sharing and good intentions that don't turn sour. Let us get some of that by looking at the potential for open communication as represented by Federation of the service that we call social media. There are discussions about this going on at national level with the US trying to consider banning TikTok because of its Chinese company origin. But if TikTok goes, what about Facebook? And if Facebook goes, what about X? And if X goes, well, those are all not federated. That's what I'm coming back around to. And if you're interested in federated things like Mastodon, the method by which they work make it appear that you can get news, social interaction, and nice videos and nice pictures by using something that is a common shared protocol, very much like the internet originally was proposed to be, with hypertext markup language that we now call the web. ActivityPub is the underpinning of this emerging federated method for social media. And we've talked about Mastodon before in our group. Some of us have become routine users of it. Others have not, because social media is a thing that is social rather than mandatory. You're not required to be social if you don't want to. But if you do want to do it in an egalitarian sort of way, the underpinnings of HTML and now ActivityPub make that possible. And the author of the protocol has agreed with O'Reilly, a publisher of many, many text books. It's tech books, not textbooks. He's writing and publishing an ActivityPub book. I don't think it's out yet, but this link is to his announcement that he's seen the cover for the first time and likes it. If anybody has questions about Mastodon that haven't been answered in the past, maybe this is the time to ask, and maybe some of us can answer. I see no hands up. So on we go with the computer security, privacy, and freedom. Oh, I hear a hand. And Ed, go ahead.
Getting a little delay here with the space, but I just wanted to mention that Facebook's Threads service is starting to federate with Mastodon, and a couple of accounts have been. It's been starting up. It's been trickling in rather slow, but I saw the other day that President Biden's account is also federating with Mastodon.
That's very interesting. And of course, our other major candidate has his own social media platform, something I think is both isolating and comforting. I don't particularly want to hear the rants of, I suppose I just have to mention Donald Trump's name, much as I don't like to say it. I don't want to hear his rants. I hear about them, and that's enough, or more than enough. But the intriguing thing about Truth Social, which is that platform, is that the media group that developed it gave him some 30% share of shares for no cost to him. So he's making money from something that he only approved of. It's weird, but he's also suing the originators of the product because they failed to give him more money. He lost money because the stock share went down. It's just such a tangled mess of foolishness. I'm glad I'm not part of it. Don't want to become part of it. And I'm hoping that Threads, as a federated service, does not eventually swamp our what I call comfortable relationships with others around the world. I'm enjoying reading a lot of the posts that are found through Mastodon, even if I don't do nearly as much as I once did with it. So
yeah, because I'm a moderator on a Mastodon instance that some people know about, And a few of our users have already inquired about blocking anything coming from threads. And so I explain what they have to do it. But, if somebody wants to block it, it is certainly possible.
The niceness of Mastodon's method and the Federation method is that each individual person can say, I don't want to see anything from that account. They can block the account so it can't share, even if it's otherwise linked to the server. And the server, through moderators like you, Ed, has the ability to say, for the benefit of our users, we have determined that this server or group of accounts should be generally banned because they support hate speech and malcontents who only want to tear others down. It is up to both the individuals to report and to block for their own benefit, and to encourage the server owner or moderators to protect their users from the hate and the damage done by that kind of horrible feedback that can be present on any social media, not just X or Facebook or elsewhere. We don't need it. We don't need to be cut down. Okay. So cryptocurrency scams in the Snap Store was related to the issues with canonical snaps back in the FOSS news. That's a relink, I believe, to the upper link of Ubuntu manually reviewing. But we also have the world's first major act to regulate artificial intelligence passed by European lawmakers. CNBC is the source. There's an ad warning. I think Ed was the one who posted this, but we hope that law is all it takes. The reality sometimes seems that if you've got billions of dollars, you can throw a lot of it where you want it to be and then get sued or corralled, as long as you don't pay off the lawmakers to do it your way. And this is a very negative comment on my part, and I apologize to those who do not share my concerns over billionaires spending to control law. Law should be mine and yours and all of us together, not the billionaires and their lobbyists. Okay, I'm going to let that stand on its own. Bluetooth trackers. That means those machines that can identify where you are by seeing what's Bluetooth and latching on to things they shouldn't. A tracker like an AirTag or a Tile is designed to be attached to your luggage and or a valuable computer, and you carry around the tag and it identifies where your stuff is. And that's good for you if it gets stolen. But if a Bluetooth tracker can be identified by somebody else that's not supposed to know about it, all of a sudden they know where your valuable item is. If you've walked away from it and left it sitting on a table, they can come by and grab the bag that it's in, even if it doesn't look like a valuable item. So the identifying of those is the issue. And you can actually use your cell phone to detect them, not to your benefit necessarily. So I think you might find that article interesting to read, because it's yet another technology that goes both ways. Anybody have any of those air tags, tiles? I actually got one from a birthday present and promptly put it in my bureau unused. I thanked the person for their present, but decided I didn't want my stuff to be so easily identified. All right. Aha, this is going to be maybe up Jill's alley here. Should you use an artificial intelligence website to identify edible mushrooms to see whether they should be eaten? The unfortunate part about this is that the article itself is behind a subscription paywall, but I found a further article by doing a search for mushroom identification app. There are a whole bunch of mushroom picture ID tools out there. But the question is, would you use a mushroom identification app as your primary reason to pick and eat a wild mushroom? What do you think, Jill?
Well, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
There are some edible mushrooms that are very distinctive, and I would have no problem using an app that tells me whether they're edible or not. But there are some extremely poisonous mushrooms that are very difficult to distinguish from certain edible ones. And so you have to know a little bit before you go into it. Let me put it that way. I would not use it as my coming on to mushroom identification with no idea at all. I would not use just an app for it.
And that's assuming the app has not been tampered with by a hacker. What a wonderful experiment for a nasty hacker. How many people can I kill around the world with this one little change of code?
No, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I was a teacher, I had an article that we discussed in our classroom that described the amount of an Amanita mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, which is called the fly Amanita, that the amount necessary to kill an entire family was that much, the fingertip beyond my thumb, in a bucket of stew, that if there was that much, the entire family was going to be a goner by the end of the time they ate the stew. So you just, the whole point of using an identification tool is great. I love the idea of being able to put a flower picture in from my phone camera and say, oh, well, that's some kind of lily. Let's see if we can get it closer to an ID, because I'd like to know what kind of lily that is. But if it's an Amanita mushroom, they have the crusty little top pieces that are white on a pale yellow sometimes. And I wouldn't want someone to use any ID tool for mushrooms particularly, but lots of other things that could kill you. It just doesn't make any sense for artificial intelligence to be the way you would do that. Not to mention that the failure rate might be 2%, but if 100 people use it, that's 2 people chancing death. I don't like that idea. Okay.
Precisely. And there's another name for that amanita mushroom, and that is the death angel.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I have heard that they are absolutely delicious until they kill you.
I believe you're right. Oh my goodness. It's like
Does
the
that
can
make
of
them habit? Does that make
That's a
them
way to
habit
die happy.
forming or not? Interesting question. I want to point out that it's not just deadly amanitas that are doing it. We now have AI self-driving heavy cargo trucks on the highways in states that haven't permitted it.
uh-oh. Not good. Bob, you had a hand up there.
One of the organizations I belong to has from time to time had walks in the woods with a mushroom expert. And he says he doesn't like when people ask, is this edible? Because almost all of the mushrooms in a woodland are there partly because they're edible to some animals. Now, some animals can eat stuff that would kill us.
All the time. All right.
And chocolate kills dogs.
Mm-hmm. Google Play. Oh, no, that's just that other article. Here, I think, is another interesting article. Again, it's a fairly long thing to read, but the UN has issued a report through its human rights committee. I think that's under UNHCR. Human rights and technical standard setting processes for new and emerging digital technologies. High Commissioner for Human Rights, UNHCR. This PDF outlines a worldview of what AI and human rights boundaries might be, but knowing how the UN is ignored largely by the big countries of the world, perhaps this will be the same. I have not read the entire PDF, but maybe we can have a discussion of it in the future to see whether this is a worthy effort by the UN or something that will only get ignored. And oh, by the way, GPT script from a company called Acorn Labs proves that open source can and will be used to invoke large language models. It's not just the online stuff. It's possible to use this open source tool to get results out of a large language model that you can connect to. I'm not sure. I think it's a good idea, and I'm interested in reactions from everybody here.
language models have their uses in terms of generatively creating a valid sentence if the rest of your program knows what you want to say. The current fad for them, where they're trained from whatever they can scrape off the internet, has the problem that you don't know what it was trained with. You don't know when it's interpolating versus extrapolating. Extrapolating is another way of saying hallucinate. They will create plausible sounding sentences which have the air of truthiness. Sometimes they're even right, but they have no concept of right or wrong. It just fits the training data adequately, so that they're in the 90 to 98% accuracy level, and if you aren't checking their results against reality, you're going to get caught out eventually.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Jerry?
Yeah, a lot of YouTube channels are using AI to generate the voices, reading from a script rather than having a narrator. And sometimes their mispronunciations are really classic.
Then again, human narrators have some fabulous pronunciation gaffes too.
Exactly.
Exactly. I believe I've heard a couple of those videos that you mentioned, Jerry, for people who are not native English speakers. The results sound a little bit canned at the moment, but they at least explained what the pictures were trying to illustrate to a degree.
If they feed their script through Google Translate and then have a text-to-voice reader voice it, that's a pretty reasonable way to create content in a language you don't speak. It may wind up hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You see that with written instructions you get with a lot of products, especially
True.
those keyboards from China that you're using.
Okay. I
Using
think
Google
we are.
Translate from French to English, I can see just how good the translation can be, because it's grammatical but idiomatic French, and it sort of stands on its head trying to translate idiomatic into English.
Yes, some languages are worse than others on that. Try Spanish from various countries.
Yes. It is the common language we don't understand from each other.
And more than Spanish, Portuguese is a minority of Portuguese, such that the internet thinks Portuguese is the Brazilian language.
And that's going to become less and less an issue in some people's minds, as theoretically English has dominated the internet, and there are plenty of language educators that I've read who feel that the promise of the internet to let other languages thrive has potentially been marginalized by the almost total dominance of English in most web pages.
Well,
Nick?
yes and no. You're getting a revival of some dead languages or nearly dead languages whose last native speakers were in the rest home on a walker, and their great grandchildren are asking them about it, and then going and reviving the language on the net.
And that works well. That works well.
The dialect of half French, half Viking of the Isle of Jersey has been revived thanks to the web. No thanks to the French government, which the official response is still Napoleon's. There is only one French.
Mais oui.
What about
Further-
Quebecois?
In Detroit, Quebecois. There are some computer languages. Computer languages attempt to be very logical and non-ambiguous for obvious reasons. Some of them were designed a century ago, way before computers, for the same reasons. And we happen to know about one on a personal level, Esperanto. Loglan is another one. They're for speaking, and in fact, they're open source in a way that was pioneered by those people much earlier. We've hosted people and we've visited people in other countries just because we share Esperanto, not English. And it's a minority issue, but it's exactly what we talk about on computers. English is heavily loaded for people in many other countries. And the US right now is declining in honor, if you will, among other countries rather rapidly. So there are countries that are purposely looking to make their language dominant. The better solution is to design a language that isn't ambiguous. And they're already there. If you look, I think you'll find most Linux distributions can be had in Esperanto as one of the alternate languages. And there's a reason for that.
That's great. That's great. We are a world that is growing electronically smaller, and we have to hope that it's going to bring us together rather than bringing us to loggerheads. That would not be a good thing, in my opinion.
Unless you like a head-on your beer.
Well, my friends, I think we have reached the point where our serious discussions are running long and our game discussions, our FOSS fun, might be a way to kind of end the meeting. The good news is that there are people who still run bulletin board systems, not many, but that there is a game called Buccaneer that was on some of the early systems in the way that Adventure was put onto one of the early computers for people to play in the background while serious work was put on hold. And it brings up the question of abandonware. We are open source advocates, meaning we like to have the ability to not only use software, but to examine the software that exists so that we can tweak it in our own way to make it more than it was in its original form. One of the educational games that I'm thinking of was something called Oregon Trail, which was just a little text game that gave you or students the chance to try to make it from St. Louis out to Oregon by making choices of what to do when they encountered bad water or what to do when they encountered opposition of some kind to their travels. What happened if you got a broken wheel on your wagon? Those kinds of games were fun, and they were expanded, and some of them are actually privatized, which is a thing we don't like as Linux users and open source free software advocates. Well, it turns out that somebody had the Buccaneer code along with the old BBS software that made the code of Buccaneer run, and the game has potentially been resurrected, even though its original authors long ago gave up work on it because bulletin board systems were in decline and there was no profit to be had from exploring it. So check that link if you're interested not only in the Buccaneer BBS game, but think about how many programs you might have used back when you had Windows XP or Apple II as your only option for a computer. What software do you actually miss from those days? Things you can't even find today. Anybody have some fond memories beyond adventure and Oregon Trail, for example?
Absolutely. Fourth. We moved
Mm-hmm.
we moved to Fourth because it was basically pretty much open source on small computers. It made them go faster and it was smaller. Not a game,
Is
and we don't need it
Fourth
now.
actually dead or just
No,
quiet?
It's
no.
doing a lot of good things behind the scenes because it takes little power. It can be put in a tiny imitation of a computer, makes a wristwatch look big, uh, and but I don't see much use of it on full-size computers, let alone the big AI ones.
Yeah, it's more in microcontrollers embedded. Um, the Raspberry Pi Arduino tier machines, but there are people doing things still, and for the same reasons. You know, portability among small microcontrollers.
Yep. And I'll bet there's a lot of other applications we don't know about for much of the same reasons, be attractive to the military and such.
Mm. Okay. Other discussion that needs to happen? Anybody have some?
I wanted to point out that Apple and Microsoft have been getting in deep with political and ethical issues, and largely through the U.S. Department of Justice, which is getting a lot of flack from corporations at this time. Might make for some interesting reading. I'll mention that when I tell you I posted that article about the AI spiral. I'll mention the other because I posted a bunch of the interesting recent articles. Apple wants the government to stop saying they can't go into the news business. Well, they already have a major corporation that has axes to grind in various places. And there's so many more examples of that across the board. So just that whole theme, I think the corporate veil is getting pierced, and a lot is going on politically and ethically as a result. I don't expect it to resolve quickly.
That is unfortunately where our country seems to be, caught between those with the resources and those trying to make the most use of the resources for the public good.
$1,
Okay.
one vote.
$1, one vote. $100, well, 1.5 votes.
A
How about a
footnote. Go ahead.
promises
That's
of $2
capitalism.
billion that never get delivered are also effective. Ah, well.
A side note on Oregon Trail that maybe only Jill will appreciate. My great aunt, the genealogist, was in conversation with distant cousins who still lived at the Oregon town just on the far side of the pass. That's the victory condition place in the game. When their family got there, they set up the trading post where you sell your wagon and buy what you need for your farm when you win the game. And as of 20 years ago, at least, they were still there.
Oh, neat.
My mom exchanged Christmas cards with them at possibly at the beginning of this century.
That is neat. Games and real life are often intertwined in ways we don't realize. That's cool. Okay, one last major topic in the question and answer area. I sent out an email with the request from the people at Science on State Street to provide them, they requested that we provide them with the hardware that we plan to use during our time for those who are going to be at and present at Science on State Street, which is coming up later this month. So we need to provide the organizers a list of what we're going to be plugging into their network, to their electricity. So if you are planning to be a participant there, please forward to me your list of what you expect will be in your kit that goes on to their electricity.
Yeah, I'll send
I
mine
guess,
later today.
oh, that's great. Thank you, Jerry. Did we provide this same information last year, Dick, when you did the frontman work?
I sent it to Dick.
No, I'm sorry.
I sent mine to
I'm
Dick, so I
on.
don't know
Okay.
if Dick submitted.
Yeah. I think that biggest problem, I think, is going to be how much table area we have and chairs. If it's popular, a couple of us can bring power strips, so one or two three-prong plugs is all we need for power. The computers we're going to bring will run for longer than they'll be there, so doesn't much
They might
matter.
care about the amperage total, though.
I didn't
missed.
hear.
You know, with power strips, they might still care about the total amperage that your power strip aggregates to for the purpose of their circuit and circuit breaker.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that that's the main issue, and I I strongly believe that the group is going to draw far less than 5 amps as a whole, unless we have big monitors that are real drains, because the computers themselves are pretty small
It'd be
amperage
nice
users.
it would be nice if we had one big monitor that we could take turns getting onto.
I have one that I'm planning to bring.
Wonderful. Can we get to it through Bluetooth?
Probably not for presentation purposes, but it has a what's the term?
HDMI.
HDMI. Thank you very much. Abbreviations always throw me for a loop.
So do you have a nice long HDMI cable that we can run back and forth with the far end?
It's probably 6 or 7 feet long, so that ought to do for most of the presentation needs.
That's probably bigger than your table.
I would recommend that everybody who wishes to sit consider bringing their own chair, folding camp chair kind of thing. I have a couple I'll throw in my car. I'm no longer driving a truck, but they'll fit into my car. And one of them will be available because I'll be using the other. I want to know I intend to sit most of the time. Dennis, you're still here. Are you planning to attend, and do you plan to bring your arcade?
Yes, I am planning to attend and bring the arcade machine.
So that
Nice.
probably is one of the ones that will need its specs ID'd. I think everybody else is bringing laptop-sized computers, and yours is running on a desktop tower of sorts, right?
Yep.
Theoretically more power drain, but not much really.
It's an old one, so it may not draw that much power, but I will see what I can get.
Okay. Ed, you have your hand.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to be borrowing a laptop from Jerry to demonstrate Vivaldi. Hopefully, assuming we're still outside, hopefully the Wi-Fi is still good out there. But I'll be bringing my own monitor, keyboard, and a mouse like I did last year. So I'll email you the specs of the monitor as well as the picture of it.
Thank you. And I think we have a good sense that there will be plenty of chance to display good stuff for the group that is showing up. And for those that don't make it, hope we'll see you again in May for the next meeting of our free and open source software presentations and meetings and demos. And don't forget, if you have things you want covered, either send them to me or mention them in the Discuss mailing list. If you're not a member of the Discuss mailing list, you really should, so that you can share information as freely as possible between meetings with the rest of our interested people. Anybody have last minute comments that we should not forget?
Thank you.
You bet. All right, we're a little bit early. We made it before our 5 o'clock. Thank you all for your attendance, your interest, and see you next month.
Thanks, Albert.
Yep, thanks, everybody. Goodbye.